Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Once Upon a Time in PatORG, the PatORG podcast where we will be speaking with the boots of PatORG All Stars. Welcome to Hollywood. I am one of your hosts, Nico, and with me on the hosting team again is Floyd. How's it going, Floyd?
Always wonderful when you're around, buddy.
Cheers. And with us, we do have the third voted out person. It's Justin. How's it going, Justin?
Oh, spectacular.
Right. So Justin has actually just very recently been voted out. I don't know if we should disclose like the timelines, but you're getting this stuff like fresh, so it's gonna be the real deal.
Yeah, you seem too happy to be this fresh.
Wound's still wide open here.
Right. So coming into the game, obviously it's All Stars. I'm guessing there must have been a lot of things like floating around in your head. Um, were there any particular people that you were especially expecting to see? Maybe some people that you expected that didn't end up getting cast. And then from there, who did you maybe have in your mind that you'd work with even before like the cast was potentially revealed?
So, I jumped on about the time that I saw that the cast reveal was about to happen, and that's when I was looking at who the other alums were currently online. I assumed everybody got pinged at the same time, so I saw a lot of names that I was familiar with and was kind of excited about. Maybe some that I wasn't so excited about.
Hmm.
So there, I mean, to answer your question, I guess I was really hoping for maybe a second chance with Henry,
Okay.
who did end up getting casted. And anybody from my own season. And I was kind of a big Shaylin fan from season 21, and even DeLuca, to be honest. So yeah, those were kind of the people I was most looking forward to possibly running into in the game, and turned out some of them were there. So
So, what then were the first few days like, and how did you like your tribe? I know DeLuca was on your tribe. Some of the other folks you mentioned weren't. Were you able to get along with anyone well, or was there someone that stood out that you didn't expect to be able to enjoy or work with?
um, I was excited to see that Sarah was on my tribe. We kind of left our season on kind of a weird note. There wasn't anything bad. It was just that we hadn't really worked together the entire game, and by the time we tried to, it was kind of too for both of us. I spoke to basically everybody right away, or so I thought. Turns out not everybody had the same impression. So
And am I right in thinking that you had another org on the go when all this kicked off?
yeah, that's true. We marooned within 24 hours of a merge in another org that I'm currently playing in. So that might have played a little bit of a role in how I thought I presented myself. I thought I was being somewhat social with everybody without coming off as too strong or playing too hard right away.
Yeah, I think that's definitely tough to kind of balance the two. Um, so you mentioned obviously Sarah was someone that you kind of had to kind of reconnect with. Um, you guys end up unfortunately losing that first vote, which unfortunately is sort of a tradition for Sarah in particular. But you end up going to the Hollywood sign. So what were your thoughts on this sort of twist that there was going to be this sort of like pseudo safety without power, meeting up with people across tribes, and I guess just not being there for the first vote, both in terms of being safe and in terms of not being able to contribute who would be ultimately going?
It was a blessing and a curse. I saw it as like a good opportunity to kind of meet with people that I may not have known prior to or spoken with prior to this season, and kind of expected, maybe unfairly, that there was going to be some sort of advantage for doing so, or at least an opportunity for one. And it turns out that that time away so early in the game really took away from the time that I could spend with my tribe and try to develop any sort of relationship in that big chunk of time, actually. I think it ended up going almost the full 24 hours. So
Yeah, that is part of the trickiness. I mean, I think we've seen on, is it Universal who hasn't gone to Tribal yet? We
Yeah.
haven't seen any alliances made on that, and I wonder if part of that is just because they haven't had to go to Tribal yet. So sometimes Tribal does sort of instigate people kind of actually locking in with each other. So sometimes not being able to attend part of that, I think, can be to your detriment, like long term. Did you kind of get that impression?
oh no, that definitely makes sense. I obviously until this point didn't realize that there were alliances within my tribe. So seeing that now after the fact has kind of enlightened me that since I wasn't part of that tribal, I really missed out on getting into any sort of alliances without intentionally creating one myself.
And that makes sense. It's so tricky early on to kind of know if you're being too fast, and we see a lot of players kind of being hesitant about being the one to kind of throw anything out, because I think especially early on, kind of overplaying is a very easy reason to get rid of someone, and then on the flip side, inactivity is a reason to get rid of someone. So it's finding that sort of balance.
It's real hard line to walk there, yeah.
Especially in an all-star season too, right? Everyone's expectations of how they're going to play, they want to right the wrongs of their previous season and make sure that, they're in those right places. So it's easy to overplay or underplay if you're trying to do the opposite.
Oh,
But
100%. That's definitely something I was trying to do was not come off too strong too early. So yeah, no, that was definitely to my detriment there.
so how does spending time with Justin and Royals, how was that? Like, what was your impressions there, and what did you come out of that with?
Um, well, it seemed like Justin wanted to kind of work together and form a unofficial Justin alliance, come a swap or a merge. I don't know how much in intentions I had on doing that after our short conversation we had about it, but it was nice to kind of have that door open.
I think you were someone who mentioned at the start, like just verifying that that chat was not going to be available for other people to look at. Did you kind of go into it thinking that you might have some sort of like juicier chats, or what was on your mind there? Like, what did you think you might end up talking about?
I was actually kind of just intending on opening up the door for that conversation. I don't think I had any specific plan to kind of create that strategy there, but if the opportunity kind of presented itself, I wanted the other two to know more than just myself that we were safe to talk amongst each other.
Yeah,
And
it
was
must be strange to just sort of let that out and like feel that you both want to get to know these people and talk, but not knowing whether you'd ever meet up again. How much do you share?
Yeah, that's the question.
was this your first time kind of becoming aware of either Royals or Justin? Like, had you spec'd either of them previously? Like, were you aware of their sort of games, or maybe what they were kind of known for?
If I remember correctly, I believe Justin's a bit of a challenge beast like
Mm.
myself, or at least that's how it's perceived. I was not aware of Royals at all, and I hadn't really viewed either one of their cons prior to this game.
That's fair enough. So you
So
kind of had a fresh sort of view on them, and what did you have any sort of like take homes as far as uh, getting a feel for them?
Probably, if anything, just that Justin came to play after I mentioned us being able to speak freely. He was the one who kind of took off real quick with, "Hey, let's kind of make this something that we can lean on go forward if we need to."
so speaking of challenges, there's the countdown challenge. Um, how was that, and how did you feel about all like five of you being involved? Because that sure was a lot.
I thought five was probably the best number to go with there, especially after we practiced it a little bit. Because in my position, and everybody of course had their own, but in my position, every set of numbers for myself was going to end in eight or three, so it's a lot easier to keep track of who was coming next in line and when we needed to be prepared for it. So I felt like 5 was probably the smart move to go with, which actually I guess kind of proved itself based off of our raw time. The problem is when you have the penalties, those kind of stack up and ultimately led to me being in this conversation today.
Right.
I think that's actually a very fair point. Just stuff like having intuitively knowing what to write. If you do have like numbers like 3, it can be a bit trickier to kind of do mental maths on the fly. So I think that's actually something that I probably hadn't even considered myself, as far as making things easier in that sense. Um, so unfortunately, as you mentioned, although you guys did have the best raw time, there were the time penalties that unfortunately by a mere 8 seconds means that you guys are in last place and are going to be going to tribal. Um, I think this is actually your first PatORG pre-merge tribal, is that right?
What? Yep, that is correct. My first and only, I suppose.
Right, yeah, that's the bittersweet thing of it, I suppose. How did you feel like things were going as far as even from previous rounds? How did you feel like you were situated within the tribe?
I had the impression that I was probably flying a little under the radar. I didn't think I was the most under the radar, though. And I didn't think that I was coming off as inactive. I see now looking through it that it was very clear that everybody had that perception, though. So I guess that kind of leaves me to kind of evaluate what I consider active or not.
That's the tricky thing. It's like we see in other tribes, like uh, I think there are other people who are probably a lot less active than you, to be honest. So it all
Yeah.
depends about the individual tribe dynamics, and I think even the 5-person alliance, which are you aware of that yet, or is this kind of like new information? I'm trying to figure out where
Um,
you're at as far as that goes.
I I just read about it about 10 seconds before we started this interview. So
Gotcha. Right, so I think even that was relatively recent. So we see the original, I think what they originally started off with as GPS being the Gabriel, Peter, Sarah alliance kind of come together. And then ultimately they tack on DeLuca and Stanley, who they kind of believe to be a bit of a pair. Um, and that was actually one of the things that was kind of a bit of a talking point as far as this round goes. Because um, I think there was real option for potentially, so the plan, yeah, how did the plan for potentially going after, uh, trying to get the vote off of you, like what were the things you that were spoken about there? Who was on your radar, and what did you think you could realistically do?
so I had what I believe to have been a very good relationship with Sarah. Looking back, maybe it wasn't as tight as I thought it was, but I do believe it was still relatively tight. And I know we were trying to keep that on the down low, so that probably wasn't screamed to anybody else on the tribe, especially since we came from the same season. We definitely didn't want that to be a very obvious thing. So this morning, actually, I looked at my phone and realized that Tara was blasting my DM saying, "Please, you need to do something. You need to jump up. Your name's being thrown out. I have a plan. I just need your help." And that was at about, I think those messages were sent at about 10:30. I had gone to bed about a half hour before that. So I was reading these at 7 o'clock, going, "Oh shoot, I need to do something. What is it? What can I do?" And Sarah kind of laid out the plan for me a little bit, stating that if I can get in with Peter and Gabriel and get them to kind of vote in my favor, that was kind of my best chance to squeak out of that. So that wasn't even something that I personally had kind of come up with. So I can't even take credit for that. And that's what I did. I got right to work on that this morning, trying to see what I could sort of pull off. And although Peter was a little bit receptive of it, Gabriel didn't really open the door too far, kind of shut it pretty quickly, which led to me essentially saying, "All right, well, there's obviously not much more I can do here." I did try reaching out to DeLuca and Stanley, just saying, "Hey, look, if there's anything I can do to get you to change your vote, I've got information I'm willing to share with you. there's something else going on here, and neither one of them wanted to respond to me aside from just saying, hey, it was great playing with you. So at that point, I was like, all right, I need to just resign and head off with some dignity still.
So where would you have tried to put the vote then if they had responded? If they had said, "Yeah, let's work with you. Let's figure out what he wants to do." Where would you have led them to?
By them, do you mean Peter and
Uh,
Gabriel, or do you mean DeLuca and Stanley?
DeLuca and Stanley. I don't mean Peter Gabriel. Oh,
So,
that's a great shout out to a great musician.
um, after Gabriel shut the door on me, basically, that's when I took to trying to get DeLuca or Stanley to try to work with me. And at that point, I was going to turn to them and say, "Hey, look, Peter and Gabriel were ready to flip on you. Obviously, they have an alliance. They're a lot closer than it appears outside of whatever that's going on. Keep me around, and I can kind of play a double agent for you guys type thing." I don't really know if that would have carried me past one more vote, but at that point, I was just desperate to try to make it one more round in hopes for a swap.
Right.
Given the choice, who out of the two would you have tried to push for, like, if you had your way?
Um, well, at first, when I was working on the Sarah, Gabriel, and Peter, I had kind of settled on DeLuca. I believe she was the one who threw my name out first. I haven't actually gone back and checked that yet, but I believe she was the one who tossed my name out first. So that was the obvious way to go, especially after finding out that she had an idol in her pocket. So I think that was kind of my best bet at the point of attempting to flip on them, since they weren't able to open up the door for me. If I was able to get any conversation going with DeLuca at that point, I probably would have tried to push it off on Gabriel, because I believe Peter and Stanley are a lot closer than it appears.
Just to throw it out there, DeLuca's confessional says that you were the only option they had outside of the five, and it would have been Jaden if he hadn't gone to the sign. But in order to keep the five together, they wanted you to be the vote.
Just a random option off of figuring out who's going to the sign, away from that, and 8 seconds away from still being in the game.
That's crazy.
That, yeah, is so tough. I mean, things go slightly differently. And as you say, you're probably not here. I think Sarah was having Gabriel, I want to say, at the top of her trust rankings, I think, throughout. I think she even did like ratings for the people in her trust rankings. And I think this round was the first time she decided to give someone a 5-star rating, and she decided to bump you up at the top. So it seemed like things were finally, hopefully, going in a direction that she was starting to, like, feel that ride or die-ness. I think at first she was a bit, you know, taken aback with your being quite like forward and being open about like laying your cards on the table, that you wanted to work with her, but it seemed like it was finally sort of starting to pay off this round. So it is a real shame. I know that might be hard to hear, but it's also kind of nice to know that you weren't just like drawing dead, and there were other options potentially that could have made things all go differently.
Just a string of bad luck and short times.
Exactly.
So was Sarah messaging you when you had gone to bed, your sort of first awareness that like things were bad, or did you kind of get an idea before that? At what point did you realize you were in trouble?
I didn't well, I guess when I came back from the Hollywood sign, Sarah had mentioned that DeLuca had mentioned my name at some point prior, I guess, to me going to the sign, because I guess it would have been weird for that to come up, and I probably should have been a little bit suspicious of that earlier. But yeah, no, it wasn't until I woke up this morning and saw Sarah blasting my DMs, wondering where I was last night, before I caught on that, oh shoot, I'm in trouble. Oh, and then I looked at the vote count, and all but myself and Gabriel had voted. So yeah, I was definitely tipped off at about 7 o'clock this morning.
So you're saying you didn't need coffee to start your day? That anxiety was pretty much the thing you needed?
That's it, 100%.
So if you had been given the opportunity and you would have stayed around longer, who would you have liked to work with in, say, the other tribes? Like, is there someone really, or even in this tribe, like, let's say there's a swap, who would you have wanted in your swap? Do you think you could have gotten further with?
I really think that if Sarah and Jess and I were to have ended up on the same tribe, I feel like we would have been able to make it to pretty well.
Sorry, you cut out there a little bit, but
Oh,
uh, sorry.
um, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's the last. No, it's okay. Just you were talking about making it to the merge.
Okay, so yeah, yeah, no, I think if I was able to get a lucky draw for the swap and end up with Jess and Sarah, I think things would have been really good. I was actually really looking forward to working with O again, and then they went out just before me. So, and like I mentioned beforehand, I was really hoping to get a second shot with Henry. I feel like we kind of buried the hatchet a little bit, but I was really curious to see how this season was going to play out with that.
Right.
That's
Always interesting to sort of look back at situations that seem to be better, but in game could be completely different.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. You never know if some people are very happy to kind of, as you say, bury the hatchet, or sometimes things remain. Like I think Sarah ended up having O dead last in her, pre-season trust rankings. So it would have been interesting to see what could have happened there. There's a lot of what ifs. I think season 22 in particular is one of those seasons where I think you guys really could have gone anyway. Like as far as like wanting to work with each other or really not. So yeah, it would have been interesting, but unfortunately, things just kind of went a bit, not ideal for you this time, and unfortunately that happens in orgs. So looking back, is there anything that you kind of identify as maybe something you would have done differently?
Credit most of the bad luck part of it to getting randomized and going to the Hollywood sign. So I don't think there's anything I could have changed there. I believe I could have been more present at marooning and communicating with my tribe better there and kind of setting the ground a little bit earlier. If I'm not mistaken, that was kind of later at night, and it was about the time that I was putting my daughter to bed, so I didn't have much of an opportunity. So I guess I really can't say that there was anything that I would have done differently, except maybe worked a little bit harder to reestablish those social connections after coming back from the Hollywood sign.
Right.
I think that's
Did
fair
you feel
enough.
sort of like you were kind of out of the loop by coming back, or was it just like you wanted to try harder, or
Yeah, no, I feel that they had bonded a little bit over that tribal, and since I wasn't present to be part of that vote, that probably put me a little bit on the outs.
easier to vote the person out that wasn't there and lost a day?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So who do you think, what do you think the future looks like for your tribe? How do you think they're going to do in the next couple of days and moving forward?
Um, pending any possible swaps in the next couple days. If they stick together, I think things. I actually think possibly me leaving might have opened up the door a little bit for. I believe their alliance name is Compass. Is that am I correct in recalling that?
Yes.
Yep.
I feel like they're going to take a shot here if they lose a challenge, and I think that's really going to kind of turn things around over there. DeLuca having that idol is going to make things very interesting. So it's going to be really hard to predict exactly what happens there, but it's definitely going to be something I'm going to look forward to.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it was kind of crazy that this early on we kind of saw something almost happen there, like even this round. I mean, it seems like obviously they have the alliance of five. Jaden's gone to the Hollywood sign. It should have been potentially like an easy vote, but it honestly wasn't. I think Sarah did put in a lot of work to try and put things in place. And yeah, it just was unlucky that things just couldn't quite go that way. But I think ultimately Peter in particular was one of the people I think that just didn't think it made sense to turn on the five when you'd obviously be leaving one of the two people out of the vote in the five that would then be able to go off and pending a Hollywood sign, pending a swap. There's just some, bad blood there that potentially there doesn't need to be. But lo and behold, I think we've just seen that he's actually got Compass as in his top three trust rankings, trumping DeLuca. So who knows what that could have actually meant in hindsight, but I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. Any other sort of thoughts that you've got going through your head, Justin, now that you're kind of like had the tiniest bit of time to kind of think and maybe, or are you just thinking you will need to go and find out the information that you don't have maybe?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely more interested in going back right now and kind of figuring out if there's, even if there was some sort of inkling that I could have tried to work in even harder somewhere else. I'm more about looking back on this and reflecting and seeing what I can do to improve my game going forward.
So you're saying that we could have maybe an addendum at the end of this of you answering us this question again and giving us a clearer answer once you've had the time to just go over everything?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Awesome.
Well, I am sorry we were speaking to you this soon, Justin. I think
Yeah.
who knows, so as we've kind of went over, there were so many little things that could have gone differently that who knows, and then we don't know when a swap's coming, and then that kind of blows things wide open as well. So sorry that it's kind of come to this, but it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today.
Yes, thank you so
Oh,
much.
oh no, I enjoyed being here. Thanks, guys.
All right, well, that was the vote out number 3, Justin, in this stacked season of PatORG All Stars. Who the hell is going to be next? I don't know. But thanks for having us, and until the next one, bye everyone.
Bye, guys.